Hey, everybody. We got a welcome here today with the pleasure of being with Mr. Darien Shulman. How you doing today, Darien?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
For the people that don't know your wonderful work, let them know a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm a composer musician. I work primarily in film and TV. You might know my music from American Vandal, which is on Netflix. We've got 2 seasons of that show. And most recently, I teamed up with the same creative team for a series called Players, which is on Paramount Plus.
Well, yeah, so definitely, definitely getting into that world, of course, like esports. And well, how, I guess my question is, how did this fall into your lap? What made you want to score this particular show on Paramount?
Well, it's the creative team that I like to work with. I've been working with them for years and years. It's Tony Yacenda, Dan Perrault, and they came up with this series. They love to do these sort of uh, documentary style comedy dramas. So in American Vandal, they were sort of sending up, the sort of true crime genre,
Right.
right? And with Players, it's more about looking at, the sort of sports docuseries of the world. So think Last Dance, Tiger. Um, uh, so they wanted to explore that and put it in the world of esports. So they teamed up with Riot Games to focus on a sort of fictional League of Legends team.
Right.
So in this world, I think there's usually like 10 LCS teams. In this universe, there are 11 when you count Fugitive Gaming. And I didn't know anything about esports before.
It's really big now.
Right? It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started doing my research, I was just kind of blown away. The amount of, the crowds are like this is an actual sport.
Right.
Like, these are arenas, and there's play-by-play guys, and there's color guys, and it's wild. It's just wild to me.
For all those parents that said video games won't amount you to anything, or playing video games now, you have a complete, lifestyle that you can get paid for. You compete in tournaments and win millions of dollars. Like it's insane. Like nobody, not even me, growing up as a gamer, would think that we would ever be at this point now where you could play video games for money.
Right. My mother loves the show, and she used to yell at me all the time for playing video games when I was a kid. So it was just surprising to me that that she took to it so much.
Now, I guess going from obviously American Vandal, like you said, which is seen as a true crime drama series, kind of a mockumentary, true crime. Like, what was the mindset, or what was the the mindset you had to be in to score something about esports? You had to have more of like a fun sound to this, where that one was like ominous and a little bit more. What was kind of the mindset behind that?
So I think the biggest thing I had to do was really just start listening to the type of music that is, sort of piped through the speakers in these arenas. So there's like these collections of sort of, LCS has like a huge library of tracks that they play, and they're usually like these instrumental. It's a lot of kind of epic, orchestral, electronic hybrids, right? And between that and researching the way other composers have scored, sports documentaries, I kind of settled on I sort of stumbled upon a sound that really runs a range. I mean, there's music for the in-game stuff when they're like they're in the arena, they're playing against another team. So there's a lot of very sort of exciting, kind of epic sounds. And then there's music for, flashback scenes or, like montages where, there's the scene in the first episode where the team goes to this what's called Asset Day, which I think is where it's the first like kind of day of the series. It's where all the teams kind of gather and they do these publicity shots and interviews and that kind of thing. And the main character, Cream Cheese, he's sort of like a kind of lovable idiot, if that makes any sense. He, sort of really overconfident, really arrogant. So there's this scene where he says, like, a lot of players really struggle with Asset Day, but I'm so cool. It's not hard for me at all. The camera cuts to this like sort of slow motion shot of him like entering the arena, and he's wearing these ridiculous sunglasses. And so, for that, I had to come up with something that, would sort of convey this sort of swagger that he had.
Right.
So there are sort of hip hop influences there. There's there's just a lot going on.
Right.
I think that this is probably the most variety in a score that I've done for a series so far.
And you got quite the library so far, and you got composers and the music of shows and movies. I feel like for the most part, you guys are the unsung heroes of the industry. Because going to San Diego Comic-Con, I went to a panel. It was like behind the music, and it was like all of these like TV show and like music composers for stuff that I'm watching that I didn't even know. You don't typically know that they are. You don't usually get that credit unless you're a voice actor or the actor on screen. So I mean, do you feel like being a composer in your industry, do you kind of get the credit that you deserve for a lot of those shows?
Well, I certainly get even if it's not sort of mainstream publicity or that kind of thing. I definitely feel like I'm an important part of the team creating these shows. The director Tony would say to me, like, he would always say this to me, and it's very, it's a huge compliment, but he would say, this really, it never feels like it comes together until, your score, Darien, has made it in. And I feel like, I've always loved, film and TV music. That's the kind of thing. I mean, I grew up listening to it. It is rare for a composer, unless you're, a John Williams or a Michael Giacchino, to get, famous, so to speak. But that's not really why I do it. I mean, I do it because I love matching music to picture. I just, it gives me it gives me a creative rush when I can come up with something that I think really, really fits the scene. And sometimes I miss the mark and I have to go back and, redo it, or
your biggest critic.
Sometimes I'm like misinterpreting what's going on the screen, and, but that's the give and take of, working with a group of people who are trying to make this project, come together. I think that like what I like the most about this, because composing in general is kind of a lonely job. You're sitting in a room and you're writing. So like a traditional composer who's just, doing that for, himself or concert music or, there's a certain, you know, trope where they're just sort of sitting there with like a quill pen and, you know, writing stuff down,
Right.
you know, on paper. You know, obviously we live in the modern world, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the collaborative nature of that's inherent in like filmmaking and in production of really any kind is what I love the most. I just think I like the back and forth. I like having other people's views on it, you know.
I guess I mean obviously this is quite the career path that you're on. I mean, like, you know, loving music and wanting to do it for and score it for shows and stuff like that. What would you say was like your greatest inspiration to even getting you on this path that you're on now?
It's, you know, it's interesting because I growing up, I was a theater geek. I grew up in New York City.
Oh yeah.
And I used to be into acting, and I used to be into you know, singing and dancing, that kind of thing. And so I think that, you know, when I got into college and I became more interested in pursuing music in a serious way, because I played piano at, you know, a young age,
right?
But I never had really given it any serious thought of like that I would, you know, pursue that professionally. I got into college and I saw my you know, I found myself drawn more to the music people in college than the theater people.
Right.
And but I still wanted to, you know, I still missed it, and I thought that, like, I came to this sort of realization that if I can make music and still be a part of storytelling in a way, that would be a good, you know, pursuit for me. That would be a good that would be a way that I could sort of satisfy both creative urges that I had. That seemed at the
right.
time. So as far as, like, you know, inspirations, I mean, I've always, as I said before, I've always listened to film composing or film music. You know, I mentioned John Williams. I mean, I must have seen Star Wars and all those movies. Like, I've seen them. I can't count as many. You know, I can't count. And it just that part of it always had, you know, sort of fascinated me.
Right.
And when I started taking lessons in composition, my professors, it was just a recurring theme from them saying, like, the stuff that you're writing is very cinematic, so you should consider going into it. You know, that was really, you know, that was really when I started wanting to do it. And so I started, you know, just putting flyers up at you know, like film schools in
come see my show. Like,
yeah, or like, are you working on a film that you need a composer for, like, that you need original music for?
Right.
And, you know, that's a great, I mean, if you're like looking to start out as a composer in, you know, in media or you know, a music maker, I mean, besides just like constantly writing music, definitely want to reach out to you know, young people, students who are like looking to take their work to a, you know, to the next level. Right. And it's so easy nowadays. I mean, and, you know, you probably know this, like, it's right nowadays, it's super easy to procure music. right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There's millions of like stock music libraries now. There's music that, you know, I mean, you're likely to find something that will at least, like, you know, do a serviceable job of scoring your film. But
Right.
there's something about custom music that, where if you have a person who, you know, you're working with, and understands what you're trying to do, and then create something original for that. To me, it always takes, you know, it just takes the project to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, just custom music in general, like, you know, having something that, you know, you made from scratch and nobody else has it, nobody else has used it, like everybody's hearing it for the first time. You know, it's definitely, like you said, like a really good feeling to have, especially, you know, that's your baby. That's something that, you know, for the most part, nobody's going to use. Has anybody sampled your music for anything that you know of? Like maybe like,
has anyone sampled it? I don't know. I mean, you know, I'd love to hear what people come up with, honestly.
some TikTok video out there or something like that is using Darien's music.
That would be cool. Yeah. Well, but the you know, the other aspect of it is that you get to develop these sort of melodies and themes and
Right.
and sounds that, you know, like if you like, through the sort of trajectory of the season, right? There's 10 episodes in Players, and so these themes will kind of recur and develop and you know, sort of build over the course of the season.
Right.
So by the last episode, when you get to this championship game, you're hearing like the melody from the title theme in the big scene. And so I want, like, you know, I always find it fun when, you know, people can pick up on that kind of thing. And they'll tell me like, oh, I recognize that from this scene in episode 7 or that scene in episode 4. That's, for me, that's like that's my bread and butter. That's the most fun.
That was kind of you know, jumping to a different project, but like how, like with the show WandaVision, they had like a recurrent theme that kept changing as the show went on.
Yes.
So like, yeah, certain stuff like that where, you know, like the battle music will evolve as it goes on, and it's still the same song, but it becomes something else, or it's like a character's theme or something like that throughout the show.
Somebody put together for WandaVision a little thing on YouTube where they pointed out that in every title theme, there's like, I think there's like 6 or 7 episodes of
like 7, yeah.
And so anyone who's seen that show like knows that like they're kind of sending up a different era of television,
right?
In the 50s, the 60s, and all the themes have this 4-note motif that's like hidden somewhere in there, in each one. So they all sound different, but they're all kind of the same.
Right.
That kind of thing I love to try to do. And yeah, those, I mean, kudos to
those Easter eggs, those
Easter eggs, man. It's so cool. I love it.
So are you a gamer at all? Do you play video games?
I have played video games, yeah, but I mean, I'm a little, you know, I'm in my early 40s, so I mean, I was playing like, you know, original Nintendo,
right?
You know, Super NES, that kind of thing.
I guess my question was like, you know, with your knowledge of that, how much of that played into Players, like video game scores going into the show, wanting to implement like some of that classic music or anything like that, or is there anything original that you might have scored that we might have missed, or we will obviously hear in the show that might be a reference to anything video game related or anything classic video game stuff?
Well, it's more about, for Players, it's more about sort of capturing the sort of the general sound.
Right.
So my themes are sort of my original you know, like my tunes are, you know, my own.
Right.
But I'm more about capturing the sort of production of it. So it's really heavily reliant. I mean, especially the in-game stuff, heavily reliant on like strings and brass and
more of the feelings of the character and stuff like that. The moments.
Yeah, and you know, sort of you combine that with like these like, you know, like electronic and orchestral you know, rhythms and drums and synths, and you put it, you know, you put all that together. So it's I was more inspired by like the sort of genre, I mean, I guess you could call it, of you know, league music in particular. And you know, I shouldn't have done this beforehand, but I actually downloaded League of Legends.
Oh boy!
After I rapped,
and rabbit hole.
Oh my god, it's really hard.
Yes,
how you guys do it.
Those what do they call it? Not MMOs, but MOBAs.
Yeah,
the mobile, it's just so much. It's just so much on screen happening at one time. Like
there's so much to keep track of.
Right. Like it's not an easy game, but that is a game that has evolved so much over the years. Like it's definitely not nowhere near it was when it's base form. You know, not just design wise, music wise. So much of that has changed over the years, and it's become so big.
Yeah, I think that like one of the things that, you know, I really credit Tony and Dan with is that they pay such close attention to like keeping the sort of real world accuracy of this game intact. Because if you've seen the show, like there's much of the show takes place several years ago, back in like 2015. There's some flashbacks in 2018 and 2019 too.
Right.
And so, as you said, like the game has evolved since then. So in order to create like the sort of in-game footage, they had to like make sure that they were using the platform that was in 2015. They had to make sure that like they had that that look was there, because gamers know, you know, like if they see something that is not right,
they'll call you out on it quick.
They will pull will point it out, and they're not forgiving about it. Nor should they be, because this is their thing, you know?
Right. It's real passionate. So much time of your life is spent into that game. People with thousands of hours into that project. And like I said, there's so many League of Legends and different projects. And like you said, the esports world is getting bigger to the point where we're now renting out stadiums in Vegas so that, you know, people can watch this on a big screen and for, like I said, for money. Like it's crazy how much this has evolved in 10 years plus time. Like I said, not just for the esports world, but just, you know, just the whole gaming community in general, which is crazy.
It's wild. I mean, and you have to, I mean, you can't make fun of it anymore. Like you have
no, not at all.
You know,
no.
You really do.
There's certain aspects of it I can make fun of, but not the actual like that guy's legitimately going to work right now. He's making money. So
yeah.
Definitely something else I wanted to ask you off of the players for a second. But I was looking at your bio, looking at some of your works again, impressive again. You touched some YuGiOh stuff.
Oh yeah, yes.
And I'm like, so my question for that's usually that's a Japanese show,
right? Well, there's it's a Japanese show, so the Konami Cross Media is the American sort of arm of it. This is my cat, by the way. I forgot he was here with me. He was sleeping underneath my desk. Sorry about that. there's a whole different like sort of sound production that is
Right.
involved with the, sort of North American version of these shows, right?
Right.
So like you had the original Japanese version, and then if the picture comes to America, you got to redo all the voices, and you got to make sure that like you have like the right sound effects and everything. And in addition, all of the music is rescored as well.
Mm.
So it's a different score in Japan than it is in the United States and Canada and much of Europe. So for that show, there's a team of several different composers, because this is a lot of, this is like a daily show.
Whew.
And there's like, I don't know what, 40 something episodes.
Right.
I don't even know the count. But you're not doing like, I'm not doing the whole thing, obviously. That's just impossible. So usually what I'll do is I'll get a scene from from an episode to do, and we will discuss like like what kind of sounds we're sort of, what kind of the sound palette. So that's what we call it. So that even though it's like several different composers and musicians writing their own music, it's gotta feel cohesive,
right,
in a way. But yeah, those shows are fun to do. Those are,
yeah. I was just really curious because I was like, okay, I typically now with Japanese animation, they don't really touch the original music too much anymore. Before they would like rewrite the opening themes and stuff like that, and change like the music in show, but they don't really touch it like that anymore. So I was just curious as to how much involvement you did have in that particular show. But it sounds like they had to pretty much redo everything, the voice work scratch and everything from scratch, just to kind of give it more of an American feel, I guess.
Yeah, that was my experience. It was we would watch it in the original Japanese.
Right.
For the stuff that I was on, it was a different score, like a different sound entirely. So I worked on YuGiOh VRAINS and YuGiOh 7s, and you sort of it was sort of reconception of like what kind of sound that we're going to try to,
right,
what we're trying to do for an American audience, North American audience, like who might have a different sort of sensibility than an audience in Japan. Yeah, it's funny you should mention YuGiOh, because I actually there was a lot of that working on that actually provided me with a lot of practice for much of the scoring that I brought to Players.
I was going to say that's pretty kind of close to. Just gaming in general was the theme of that. I figured that would transition into that world as well.
Yeah, there's definitely parallels there, I'm actually really grateful that I got to work on those.
Yeah, because now all I'm going to hear now was your music when I watch these shows now. So it's like once you see one card and you see it all the time, I'm going to hear your. I'm like, oh, that's Darien's music right there. I guess just last question. Jumping back in the Players.
Yeah.
What's something that the fans, not only of this show but of you, should look out for in terms of like your music in this show?
The thing that the thing that has jumped out at people the most for this show, for Players, has actually been the title theme, this 30-second theme that appears at the beginning of every episode. I think it's my strongest title theme that I've ever done.
Oh, wow. It's a big, it's a big, yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know that that's like, you know, and I've done a few, but like, I feel like this one in particular just really, you know, nails what the show is supposed to be about, which is just this, you know, fun, upbeat, kind of bombastic, over the top thing. And when people, you know, find out that I'm, you know, the one who, you know, did the music for Players, often that's the first thing that they'll tell me is like, you know, they'll like say, dude, that title theme was sick. That was so good. And it was so fun to compose. And it just, and then to see that, like, to see the, you know, production, like the visual design team, like, take that music and create their sort of montage of, you know, graphics and clips from the show, and kind of, so it's sort of like the opposite of the way it usually works, where music scores picture. For a title theme, it's often the music comes first, and then the graphics kind of develop based on the sort of beats of the music. And so I just think they did a really, really terrific job.
I mean, it definitely sounds like
it's very close to Last Dance. If you like, it's a very similar sort of trajectory in terms of like the picture and everything.
I was gonna say, man, you sound really passionate about it. Like, this was like, you know, this was something that you really put your soul into. Like, you like that title sequence. Like, I could tell, like, the glow that I'm getting from you about how good that was. Like, you just created something that you don't know if you. I'm not gonna say you'll never be able to get it again, but like this was, you surpassed yourself to a certain extent. You're really liking it. So I mean,
thank you.
And I'm pretty sure, like, you know, everybody that's going to be watching it is going to tell, like, and feel the passion that you had in scoring this show, and definitely love the music and everything that goes behind it. But like I said, I could definitely tell that you're feeling the passion behind it.
When it really, sometimes you have these moments when it really feels kind of effortless, and that's how it felt for me for this particular show. So
look, it was great. So Darien, I really appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this with me. This was definitely educational. Of course, I really enjoyed being able to exchange this with you and feel the passion that you have behind your music, and that you actually care about the craft of gaming and so much more about when it comes to this. Like, you're not just going to SoundCloud and find random, but you actually are originating original music. And I feel like you said it's really hard to get a lot of that now when there's so much of it on demand. So I'm glad that we still have really great composers like you out here. You know, especially for me, like when it comes to like Miyamoto, like Final Fantasy, stuff like that, hearing the composer stuff like that for that music and just losing myself in that. Like, just glad to hear that you are putting this passion into the work.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you for this. And on that, thank you again, and we'll see you guys later.
See you later.